You got problems that you ought to be concerned with. Moolah. You don't know how you're supposed to earn it, or what to do with it, or how to keep it. You're a freak with a dark, shameful secret. But you're not the only one. Face your hidden financial fears with a blast of sun. Now your healing has begun. It's Bad with Money with
Gabe S.
Done.
Hello and welcome back to Bad with Money Bonus Bag. We are back with Danielle Elliot of the Climbing the Walls ADHD podcast. Welcome back. Do you want to tell my audience like who you are and what you do in your own words?
Sure. Yeah. So I am Danielle Elliot. I am a science journalist and documentary film producer. And I recently hosted an investigative podcast looking at why so many women are being diagnosed with ADHD.
So part of it is, Climbing the Walls, I think, comes from this rise in ADHD diagnoses during COVID. So can you talk about the impact that had on diagnostic statistics?
The percentage of women diagnosed with ADHD doubled from, I believe it was 2020 to 2022, according to the CDC. And then it continued to rise. It's continued to rise ever since. So as far as the impact, I would say it really made us so much more aware of how many women have ADHD. But I would say that I think the gap is now, I think it's now 1.5 men to 1 woman, but it might be 3 to 1. I shouldn't have tried to use a statistic because I'm not sure.
Sure. But either way, it grew during the pandemic. What do you think that's about?
I think there's a ton of factors, enough that we were able to make a 6-episode series. But I think a lot of it does have to do with not understanding the ways that scientists just didn't look at girls and women with ADHD for so long that I say not understanding. But the truth is there were people out there, there were clinicians who understood how it was impacting girls and women. But a lot of the gatekeepers, if you will, were not willing to listen to those people. And therefore, the research wasn't done. And in the absence of research, you don't get a ton of official recognition of something.
I'm looking at the CDC's report from 2023, where trends in stimulant prescription fills among commercially insured children and adults had risen. This was from 2016 to 2021. So even before the pandemic, there was increasing use of stimulants to treat ADHD. But then I think during the pandemic, it says that things got more obviously intense because people were stuck inside, and they also had access to telehealth in a way that they didn't before.
Yeah. And I think that's actually even something that helped me get to a diagnosis is that if I have to make 7 doctor's appointments or if I have to wait 6 months, I often lose interest before I even get there. During the pandemic, a lot of states, and I'm pretty sure federally, removed some of the points that make it tough for people to get to psychiatrists to ever get to the point of potentially getting a diagnosis. So telehealth meant that you could have one conversation the same way that we're having it right now. You could remotely speak to a psychiatrist and get diagnosed. We did definitely see that there was overdiagnosis happening for capital gain, I guess you could. I don't know what word to use there, but there's 2 telehealth companies that have been federally investigated, and both of those cases have now, one of them has been closed, a case against a company called Done, and then another case is under investigation because they proved that these companies were essentially, I don't remember if they were giving out, they were telling doctors to diagnose so that they could get more subscribers to their platforms. So there was definitely overdiagnosis. That is 100%, I think, something that's true. But I think on the flip side of that, something we don't talk about a lot is that there's still a tremendous amount of underdiagnosis because a lot of people in a lot of communities don't have access to any of the healthcare that would lead, or potentially even the information. I think another thing that happened during the pandemic was the dissemination of information. I think that mental health TikTok, if you will, really just helped a lot of people say, I think a lot of women started talking to each other even more. And I think they have talked to each other for years, but it was able to happen at a scale that had never happened before.
Yeah, I think learning you're not alone. So personal failings for me with autism, I was like, all of these are personal failings. No one else has ever failed the way that I have failed. No one else. I'm really trying to grapple with that. I started a Substack, shout out. It's called 1,000 Natural Shocks. And a part of what I'm writing about now on it is the self-centeredness of thinking you're the only person who's ever screwed up in the history of time and space. And so my ability to take something that I have done and be like, well, this was uniquely stupid, which is has been really even, I grew up in an addict and alcoholic home, and going to Al-Anon was one thing where I said, oh, my problems are so unique. Like, I'm the only person who has had this problem ever. And then you go to Al-Anon and every single speaker is just saying what you were going to say. And you're like, oh my God. And so I think that happened a lot with mental health TikTok in a way where suddenly you were like, wait, this isn't like just me being a bad person.
Honestly, like I think I said the rejection sensitivity element of, and like that night during that breakup, I was like, I'm a monster. I like yelled at this person who I just like had this whole moment. And it was the first real breakup I'd been through. So I was sort of like, I have no anger management. I'm a horrible, horrible person. And then when I started really learning and like realizing how many other people had almost exactly the same experience, I was like, someone asked me recently, what's the biggest thing you've learned through this whole process? And I'm like, honestly, I've learned that I'm not unique. I'm not special.
Right. And
like, I mean that in the nicest way, because to me, I have like vilified my kind of unique traits for most of my life. Like I'm kind of like, oh, there's something wrong with me. Like, yeah, I've always thought it was such a personal thing. So saying that I've learned I'm not unique or special is like the greatest thing that could have happened. Because I'm like, to me, I think there are probably ways I'm unique, but yeah.
Very recently, I used Indeed to get hired for a part-time job. The employer put their job listing up on Indeed. That's where I found it. I applied through Indeed and I got the job. Indeed made the hiring process so easy. I was able to search for all kinds of jobs based on my skills and being able to look at really easy to read descriptions from the jobs about what they were looking for in a candidate. If I needed to hire someone again, I would absolutely use Indeed. And I also have been telling everyone when they've been saying that they want to look for a job or they don't know where to find a job, I was like, you got to use Indeed. I've literally told like 4 people like, oh, I found this job on Indeed. That's where you should look if you're looking to find a job. And the job I was looking for, they needed someone really quickly because they were growing so fast. So they needed to hire the right person very fast, and it was so important. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. I sincerely love Indeed. I went on there. It was incredibly easy. I literally got hired in September for a job actually using Indeed. I know this is a podcast ad, but I mean it. I really did use Indeed. I really do recommend Indeed. It all happened so fast and I didn't even have to really stress. I found what I wanted. I got the job. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there are no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? In the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. And if you're looking to hire, you need to use Indeed because you'll find people like me. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/badwithmoney. Just go to Indeed.com/badwithmoney right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/badwithmoney. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. I mean, I'm sad that other people are having problems. I don't mean to be like, but it is interesting to read people having the same issues. And even starting the Substack, I was saying, oh, I'm uniquely terrible. But I think it behooves us to realize that everyone's having a bad time. Especially now, especially right now.
Yeah. And like, I think when you start to realize it, like, I think one thing for me was I was sort of like, yeah, I'm impossible to date. And then I'm kind of like, if this many people are having this hard of a time, and so many of them are in what seem to be healthy relationships, whoever knows what someone's, I don't know, but they, to me, seem like healthy relationships. it must be possible that I'm dateable. Like there must be, you know, it sort of just like helps take the edge off some of those things that you're like, because you might be the only one in your community and in your circle that you know of that's like that, but it doesn't mean you're the only one.
Yeah. Back in the day, you wouldn't have been diagnosed. They would have just kind of sent you away somewhere. Mm-hmm. And you would think, oh, I'm the person in my community who's
I'm
like
the
this. And then there's no incentive for anyone else to say that they're like that because they don't want to get sent away.
Right. Although, have you read the book Neurodivergent Mind?
No. I
absolutely love it. And it's a lot about people who were sent away, but they were sent away to a place where things turned out to be so much better because it gets into, I also think a lot of your interest in capitalism, like you might love this book because it gets into the way that the only reason these types of, I can't remember what they were, but I'm going to call them like art therapy centers, essentially. Like that's really what happened there. But then as the medical profession became more and more of a profession, doctors were like, well, these are treatment centers, but you don't need to be a doctor to administer the care that's needed at them. And they saw that these treatment centers, this was in England in the 1800s, I'm pretty sure, like early 1800s. And they're like, people are significantly recovering from what we call mental illness, but they're doing it without the help of medical doctors. And that's not good for a profession that tries to charge people a lot of money for our services. So we need to be the ones who are curing people. This book blew my mind. I highly recommend it. The first 2 chapters, honestly, get into all of that. I just went off on a tangent, but I highly recommend that book.
If there's no industry, I mean, God, because I mean, like RFK Jr., shut up. But it's also so many things have been medicalized. Not that they aren't medical problems, but that an industry crops up around it. And I don't mean established industries. I mean scammers who are telling people to drink ivermectin if you have cancer.
Yeah.
So I'm not talking about, don't try to put me in with RFK Jr. Okay. I actually hate that man so much. I hate him. Yeah. So I have so many enemies on this podcast, one-sided enemies.
Good for you for actually saying it. I'm so happy that you're actually saying it. I think that we're like in this moment of people becoming afraid of voicing, and that's what they want. That's what the enemies want. Anyway.
I have no idea. I'm going to get, this show is not what people think it is. Like they think it's like a show where I'm going to be like, just budget. And it's just never, like the big review is like, this podcast isn't going to help you make money. And I was like, oh, we never purported to do that. This is not, you go elsewhere for that.
No, but I think it's so important to talk about how everyone is with money. I just think it's so, I'm really excited for your new Substack because I'm like, I didn't get into all of the Reddit threads that exist on late stage capitalism as the cause of ADHD, but it is deep. I think there's one sentence in episode 5 of the podcast where I talk about how the ways that we're living, it might be episode 4. Anyway, I talk about how the ways we live now might be contributing to the rise. And I think I could make an entire series on that, just on that one sentence.
Yeah. It's also, I mean, you mentioned, you touched on it a little bit, that if you have to make 7 appointments to get diagnosed with something, that's literally a impossibility for the person who's trying to get diagnosed.
Yeah, it's impossible.
Good luck, babe. I'm having neurological issues, and the amount to which I have to be on top of it and call people and make sure the insurance is going through and get the insurance to like, oh, you need a spinal MRI. Okay, well, that's going to take 10 days for insurance to say if you actually need it or not. You may get covered, may not get covered. Then you have to wait for the radiology department to have an opening, but then you got to make sure you can take off work to do it. How am I going to drive there? All these things. So if you're someone who can't even get to one phone call because it's so stressful and you have to gear up for like 24 hours to do it, we are not going to that MRI. Yeah, no, it's not happening.
It's not happening. And that stress is going to permeate to other parts of your life. And so when I get into like, why is ADHD on the rise? I think another one of the reasons is like this individualism means that every single person has to do everything entirely for themselves. And when, like what you were just describing with insurance, when there's that many steps, I just don't do it. Like there's like entire like 4-year periods of my life when I didn't go to a doctor because
Yeah.
I just didn't want to deal with figuring out insurance. And that's not good.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, my thigh went numb over 2 years ago. And people are like, why didn't you do anything about it? And I was like, one, I could still walk. It didn't affect anything. And two, when would I have done something about it? I guess I did find the time to get top surgery. So I guess I did do that. But
well, that's the things that are most important, right? Like there's like something about that motivation. Like it's like there's certain things like I found the time and the organization to do IVF on my own. Like I found the time to do that because like I said, that's like one of those big life goals. So we find the time to do the things that we're intrinsically motivated to do.
Yeah.
But when it's like, I don't know, I broke my toe 2 years ago. I still have issues from it. I never did anything about it. My whole foot was purple, but I didn't like, yeah.
And honestly, too, with top surgery, it was pretty straightforward. You got the letter, you go in, you get the surgery, you go home. Finding out what's wrong with you, getting a diagnosis, that's a different animal. That's calling different people, going to different things, asking the right questions, finding a doctor who's not an asshole, even though I am still going back to the guy who's an asshole because I do have a high tolerance for weirdos.
Well, you also already have it's like one less step. Like finding someone new would take steps, I would assume.
He's nuts. So it's also kind of funny to be like, yeah, I'm going to keep going to this doctor and trust him with my health. He did, within 2 minutes of talking to him, tell me and my friend that we should buy a gun. So, but I'm very confused about certain people's politics. He was like, you should buy a gun, but I think everyone should have a gun, but they should make it really hard for you to get one. Like they should make it even harder for you to get it. There should be more tests. But everyone should have one.
But everyone should have one. 'Cause, well, I'm like, I don't know this doctor. But I tend to think when I hear people say that, I'm like, well, define everyone for me. Like everyone who you consider. Yeah. Always like someone said to me about Trump, they were like, oh, well, if the stock market goes up, no one will care. And I corrected them. And I was like, no one who is capable and aware of how to invest in the stock market, potentially. But like also not everyone. And I was like, no one is not no one. You know, I was just like,
I know.
Yeah. Like, I was like, your definitions here are not, we need to clarify that. You're using very broad terms that are not accurate. I was like, a lot of people will care because a lot of people care about things. They're just not the people who you consider valuable, I guess. Anyway.
Exactly.
We could go into these politics
no. You nailed it. Okay. Let's take a diversion.
Okay.
What would you say is your favorite or weirdest rabbit hole you've gone down that wasn't money?
It wasn't money. So many. Oh, I'm like, there's like 20 years worth of them that I can think of, but
I know.
like thinking of a specific one, I'm like, I've heard this is an ADHD thing, like instant recall isn't always there. Like some of the things have now become part of my life, right? So you're like, what's the rabbit hole? But I'm like, when I was 22 and I read a book, it was called Skinny Bitch. And this is like, but it was actually about being vegan. It wasn't about how to be skinny, but these two women had gone vegan and become skinnier. And I was 22 and just like, what? Is there a way I could look better? And it became this rabbit hole. But I found it at Barnes and Noble in 2007. And then I became a vegan and then I became a raw vegan. And I'm like, that was a rabbit hole if I think about it. And it was so much fun. Like I ended up pitching a book that was never sold, but I had so much fun writing it. But this was like 2008 when like you couldn't find vegan food anywhere, you know, or you could find it, but you had to really look for it. And I had there was this like local publication in New Jersey where I'm from that paid me to write a vegan column where I just traveled around trying to find vegan food. Like talk about a rabbit hole.
My God. Well, first of all, they've talked about Skinny Bitch, I think, on Maintenance Phase, which is a great podcast about how the weight loss industry is horrible.
It's horrible.
And so it is funny to be like, oh, could I look quote unquote better? But then it just leads you to be a vegan in a way that like, and veganism can be like very orthorexic.
Yeah.
But it is funny to then lead it to being, oh, this is now how I'm going to live my life. And then you're like, oh, that's actually my normal life. And it's about totally different things now.
Totally different things. And I haven't been vegan. I'm still, now I'm pescatarian, but like, it was only because once I went, I'll tell you this, it's a weird rabbit hole, but I'll go off on this tangent for you, that I read this book, and one of the statistics that really got me, like, being skinny wasn't enough of I'm going to change my whole life. But there was my birthday is Earth Day. And since I was a child, I have been fixated on that like my job is to be good to, I was always like, don't litter, earth. Don't do this. Like, you have to protect the earth. I was obsessed with it. Anyway, I read, there was one sentence in it that said the majority of carbon monoxide in the air comes from cows farting. And the reason that so many cows are farting is because the industry is so big, because so many people eat meat. And that's when I was like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be the person who doesn't eat meat. And then that led me to being vegan. From there, I became raw vegan. And then I was getting my hair cut. And I mentioned to the woman that I thought I had a bald spot. And I was 24. And she starts doing my hair, and she'd been doing it for 2 or 3 years. And she's like, Danielle, I don't want to tell you this. You have 4 bald spots. And that's when I was like, oh, I can't just eat raw food all the time the way I'm doing it. You can, I'm sure, do it in healthy ways. I was 24 and not doing it in healthy ways. And I was drinking every night. Like, I was just like,
oh my God,
not a healthy person. But where all of this led me was that I left working in NBC, like I was at NBC Olympics. I left those jobs and the other freelance stuff I had at the time and went to Boston to Tufts University to pursue a certificate in health and nutrition policy. I lasted 2 months and I was so bored that I went straight back to journalism. But that's when I later pursued a graduate degree in science writing. And it all sparked from reading Skinny Bitch and being like, reading the studies in Skinny Bitch completely changed everything. And then I ultimately managed to tie all the sport, like all my interest in sports reporting, into health reporting. And for a while, I only reported on the intersections between health, science, and sports.
Oh my God. Well, first of all, thank God it took a turn from wanting to be skinny and into saving the earth, ? Yeah. And then it's also, wow, no one has ever been motivated so positively by the book Skinny Bitch ever, I gotta say.
And it was all because I was at Barnes and Noble and saw it on the counter, and I was like, I honestly think I was sort of like, let's see it. Who's going to claim to be skinny now? Like, I was like, how are they going to sell me to change what you eat? And then they actually did. Like, they also had a statistic on, or a study on osteoporosis and how tribal groups in Africa have lower rates of osteoporosis than in the US, and they drink significantly less.
God.
It was like all of this stuff. And I was like, research can be so interesting.
I don't even trust their methodologies.
No,
I don't trust any study they put in there. I think it's all like ridiculous.
No, I agree with you now. Yeah, I totally agree with you now.
That's so funny.
I ended up traveling the entire East Coast looking for places. Like, that food blog became, I like made an entire vegan map of Baltimore before Baltimore had vegan restaurants everywhere. Like, I'm telling you, I went to Boston. I got to make it. And my friends called me, the book proposal was called That Normal Vegan, because my friends were like, one of them one night was like, we're going to meet my friend Danielle for dinner. And her friend was like, and she's like, but we need a spot that has vegan food. And her friend was like, oh God, because this is like 2007. I don't know. Like, in New York, not a lot of people were vegan. Erin was like, oh no, she's totally normal. She's just also vegan. I was like, I don't know if I am normal, but that became the name for a while. Now it's like everyone does it. Yeah.
Yeah. And now there's so many vegan restaurants.
So many everywhere. It's like hard to not find something vegan on a menu now.
Yeah.
And that's just like, it so much shifted into, because there became an industry around it. Back to your point earlier, right? Like, people realized they could make a lot of money.
Hopefully it's more environmental reasons and less skinny bitch reasons, but who knows?
I hope so. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you and your work?
They can find me on, it's sort of all over the place. I don't know why I have such a hard time answering that, but right now the easiest place to find me is on the podcast Climbing the Walls from understood.org.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Bad with Money with Gabriel S. Dunn is a production of Noted Bisexual, produced by Melisa D. Monts and Diamond MPrint Productions. Edited by Diane Kang, post-production sound by Coco Llorens, production assistance by Melanie D. Watson, and music by Mike Kaplan, Zach Sherwin, and Jack Dolgen, sung by Sam Barbera. Thank you, love you, bye!